Lyoto Machida was the Karate Kid of the UFC. Known for his elusive and tricky counter-striking game, he frustrated opponents at range with his feints, movement, and blitzing offense while enticing them to rush onto one of his counters. Machida's father, Yoshizo, was a Shotokan karate master who moved to Brazil and married Lyoto's Brazilian mother, Anna. Of course, Lyoto would grow up learning the art of Shotokan karate from his father, but he also trained in other disciplines, including Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, Muay Thai, and even sumo. If you watch Machida's early run through the UFC's light heavyweight division, you might remember hearing Joe Rogan mention Machida's sumo background. But if your only exposure to sumo was Western portrayals in pop culture, you probably wondered why a sport that is just about two fat guys trying to push each other out of a ring could have any application to a real fight. And while sumo certainly includes plenty of gigantic men slamming into each other, that's far from all that sumo is. Pushing your opponent off the clay platform, called the dohyo, is actually only one of the ways to win in sumo. The rules state that if any part of the body other than the bottom of your feet touches the ground, you lose. So there is actually a plethora of trips, throws, and takedowns in sumo as well. In fact, with origins dating back to the 8th century AD, sumo predates other traditional martial arts like judo, and sumo likely had a big influence on the development of those other grappling-focused styles. Sumo wrestlers, called rikishi, are top-tier athletes who live hyper-disciplined lifestyles, training daily to make themselves immovable walls of flesh, while maintaining great flexibility and nimbleness for their size. In this video, we'll look at how Lyoto Machida utilized tripping techniques from sumo in his MMA career. Winning techniques in sumo are called kimura-rights, and the first one we're looking at is the nimaigeri, which means ankle kicking twist down, while pulling the opponent up to make him off balance, kicking the outside of his planted leg to throw him down. Machida is locked in an over-under clinch position with Dan Henderson, meaning he has an underhook on one side and an overhook on the other. While leaning his weight back, he uses the underhook to push Henderson across to one side while pulling down on his overhook to increase the torque. This forces weight onto Henderson's right leg and makes it so that he needs to step his right foot out to maintain balance. But Machida uses his left foot to trip out that right foot, preventing him from stepping it out while forcing him over the blocked foot with his underhook. The next kimura he used is called a kirikaeshi, or twisting backward knee trip, placing a leg behind the opponent's knee, then pulling him and throwing backward. Machida has a body lock on Tito Ortiz and is driving him back towards the fence. He steps his left leg deep behind Ortiz, then sags his weight down, twisting and pulling him over with the body lock. His left leg creates a barrier that trips out Ortiz's right leg. The difference in MMA is that Machida can follow his opponent to the ground by maintaining the body lock to end up in top position. Now let's look at his use of the suso harai, or rear foot sweep. After unleashing a throw, sweeping the opponent's ankle and pulling him down backward to the ground. BJ Penn closes down Machida, but Machida hooks behind his lead leg with his own, tripping it out as Penn sits down to throw punches up close. Here Machida's southpaw stance makes this more readily available as his lead leg is already close to Penn's. He pushes on the face to help topple Penn. The last technique is the one Machida made the most use of, the sorogake, or outside leg trip, hooking the calf around the opponent's calf from outside and forcing him down. Thiago Silva has Machida clinched up against the fence, but Machida has an underhook and is pushing behind the elbow of Silva's framing hand. He quickly brings his right foot around the back of Silva's leg and hooks behind the knee. His push on the triceps allows him to force Silva over the tripped leg. Machida then immediately takes advantage of the stumble. Here again, Machida just needs the underhook and a frame to push his opponent back. Then he can use the sorogake outside trip to force him down. Another way that Machida set up his trips was with his darting rear hand attacks. Again, because of the opposite stance matchup, after throwing his rear hand, his lead leg is very close to his opponent's, so he can take advantage of their defensive reaction to his strike to step behind and trip. But Machida also has a crafty setup from the orthodox stance as well. Watch Machida's lead foot here. He subtly steps it out when he sees his opponent charging in, lining him up for the rear hand counter. As he lands a strike, now watch what he does with his rear foot. He brings it forward with the momentum of his strike and hooks behind his opponent's lead leg. Then he just needs to push to topple the opponent over the tripped leg. Being able to use this trip from southpaw or orthodox is very tricky and pairs well with his typical blitzing counters. It's interesting that even though the very first UFC fight included a sumo wrestler, the late Tila Tuli, sumo training and techniques haven't found much of a place in MMA. Sumo is a very physically demanding sport, and devastating injuries are generally inevitable, so the few rikishi that have tried to transition into MMA have generally been way out of their physical primes and just looking for a payday. On top of that, probably all the techniques from sumo that would be useful in MMA are found in other martial arts as well, so you could learn everything that Machida used in this video from judo instead if you wanted. However, the reason I made this video is not to argue that everyone should be cross-training sumo like Machida, but instead I just wanted to clear up some of the misconceptions about what sumo is, so if you like seeing trips and throws in MMA, you might enjoy watching sumo.